Giuliani, I see him throwing mud at the wall to see what sticks. He is going to try and disparage his former colleague, Michael Cohen, as much as he possibly can to discredit anything that he might say in defense of himself. I'm still struck by the fact that the guy who once said he would take a bullet for Donald Trump is now ready to finally defend himself from legal jeopardy. I don't really see what Rudy Giuliani is trying to accomplish here by saying that he is a liar. I wouldn't think that that would have much credibility coming from this administration.
Well, especially because this is somebody in the past who was very, very close to Donald Trump and reportedly knows a lot of things about Donald Trump from way before he was nonstop drumbeat on the Russia investigations and the other things that are brought up about the president.
You know, I think to put it in perspective, he has a Teflon shield that is also a very small one because his numbers are very bad. Like, let's start from there as a baseline. It's just that they're very bad and also very stable in being very bad. And I think for his supporters, basically, anything you could say about the president at this point is kind of baked in. They know what they're getting. They know that he's going to say things that are going to infuriate people. They know he's going to cause chaos with world leaders. They know that he has these sort of scandals that have surrounded him since before he was elected and before he took office. And, you know, I don't think that you've seen much that actually moves the needle. There are some people who feel uncomfortable with that when you see the fluctuation of his approval ratings. That's a lot of Republicans who, you know, support his SCOTUS nominations, but don't necessarily like the way he conducts his personal life. But for the most part, you know, also there's such a mentality that it's us versus them that, you know, they're not going to say,
So he's made a calculated decision here that it is his core base of supporters, Stephen, that are going to either rise or sink his boat. Does that break practice with a lot of other administrations that we've seen that try to reach out, expand the tent, and bring others in?
Well, I tend to remember presidents wanting to try to bring in as many people as possible. No red America, no blue America, there's only America. But
that's Barack Obama's famous line.
When I look at Donald Trump's base, I went to a conservative conference in North Carolina months back, and there was a standing ovation line by the keynote speaker at this conference, the Conservative Leadership Conference, where he said, maybe we need a mob boss president because we've had enough.
A mob boss president?
A mob boss president.
A mob boss
Yes, this was a standing ovation line from Donald Trump's base where people were very excited about a change up in Washington. And when you look at Michael Cohen, this tape that was put out where they're talking about doing a payoff of $150,000, this is what people knew about Donald Trump going in. I think they're not surprised when they hear this stuff coming.
Ariel, I spend time in the Midwest throughout the summer where when I talk to people out there, they don't talk to me about Russia. They don't talk to me. But out in America, they're not paying as much of attention to this.
I've always thought that the sort of biggest Beltway bubble has nothing to do with how people view different policies, but it's how much attention you're paying and how much time you spend, you know, obsessively checking Twitter and looking at the latest developments. In some ways, this has all become a very involved, you know, very consequential soap opera. And if you have a team already, you've sort of picked that and you can see everything through that lens. A lot of people, frankly, are not paying that much attention. And, you know, I think it's become very complicated, and it really depends on you having sort of a strong sense of political norms.
I want to move on to Brett Kavanaugh, the nominee for the U.S. Supreme Court. Kavanaugh is now starting to make his rounds up at the United States Senate, meeting with senators. There was an interesting profile on Chuck Schumer over the weekend that said Schumer is trying to thread a needle here. He doesn't want to put too much pressure on Democrats in Republican states like Joe Manchin, but at the same time, they want to fight Brett Kavanaugh's nomination and deny him that seat as in any way they can. Stephen, is there a path to success here for Democrats that they see? Because at this point, Brett Kavanaugh, aside from these squabbles, these inside baseball squabbles about paperwork, seems to not be causing this groundswell of populist revolt that a lot of the Democrats had said he was going to cause.
He's not wildly as controversial as he's being made out to be by his opposition. He's a pretty milquetoast conservative candidate for the Supreme Court as far as picks go. They need the Roe v. Wade hype and drama to stick for this to actually go anywhere so that they can peel off senators from Alaska and Maine who are moderate Republicans on this issue and very concerned about abortion access. I'm just still struck by remembering that Antonin Scalia was a unanimous vote in the Senate for confirmation. We are in a state of all-out warfare when it comes to the Supreme Court, and it has really gone too far.
In many ways, Kavanaugh is the ideological heir to Antonin Scalia, more than his actual replacement, Neil Gorsuch, was. Ariel, when you look at this, right now there seems to be a fight over documents related to Kavanaugh's work in the George W. Bush administration. That does not seem to be the thing that would set people's hair on fire. Does that already seem like the air is going out of the Stop Kavanaugh balloon?
Yeah, I mean, you haven't really heard a lot about Democrats, talking about SCOTUS, and I don't think it's an issue that's really at the top of a lot of people's minds. We have seen a little bit more strident opposition than there was to Neil Gorsuch, so there's a little bit more of that movement on the left, but you're not really seeing that outpouring of anger yet that you would need, I think, to make this a real
But to Stephen's point, if this does come down between the discussion over Roe v. Wade remaining in place and Roe v. Wade overturning, could that be the linchpin that changes this entire conversation?
Yeah, I mean, that's a decision that is phenomenally popular. I don't think people realize how sort of unanimous the support is for keeping that.
Well, it's also despised in a lot of circles as well. It's one of the most divisive issues we've ever had.
It's despised, but also public opinion is very solidly on the side of keeping it around.
We had polling that said majority of Republican men actually want Roe v. Wade to stay in place. This is not as unpopular as you'd think, even with the opposition team.
When we